We are here with Ethan Van Sant at the Pro Tour in Baltimore. Man, congratulations at first for making it here to the top 64.
Yes, thank you. Little heartbreaker though. 35th, just missed the PTI and the extra 500, but for a tournament I put absolutely zero prep into. I can't hate it. I can't hate the result, right? And it was with Rhinar. So I think we got something a little special to show off, which will be fun.
So why did you decide to go on Rhinar instead on Levia?
Well, truth be told, if I play Levia at these events, it's very easy to just go even. If I play Levia, I'm good enough to win what I should, but I'll lose what I also should, just matchup-wise, and then also lose like an extra game or two to variance. And so I wanted to kind of break trend of just going like 4-4, 5-3. That's kind of like the Levia lock. You can have a great start, you can have a great games later, but like the record kind of ends up being about there. She's not an insane deck. She's a fun deck, but not an insane deck. So I tried to just instead pivot towards a deck that, in this room with very defined matchups, like Lexi, Oldhim, Dromai, Azalea, like since we know kind of what the metagame was, could I play something right underneath that had its lane? And Rhinar actually, you know, for one, is another brute, so that I was kind of a little biased, right? But it had its lane. If I built it to beat the Oldhims and the Dromais, and I just got those matchups because they're definitely in the room, then I should actually do pretty well. Now, if I got the matchups I didn't want, then, you know, it's just a card game. It happens. So I didn't really know what I was doing with Rhinar. I didn't have anyone I was talking to about the list. I didn't have any time to practice because I was putting out the Battle Hard Enrichment videos the entire week previous to this. Yeah. So I, on the Saturday before, built a deck on Talishar, played 100 games in 3 days, Saturday to Monday, and locked a list that was bad, like 50% win rate, but if you looked at all the Oldhim and Dromai games, 100% win rate. I'm like, all right, that's what I was looking for. So I locked the list and then just didn't touch it again until here at the Pro Tour, played it for the first time in paper, and ended up 35th. So I don't know if it's good. It only went 4-4, but it did kind of what I wanted it to, which is good enough.
So how did the draft went for you?
Draft was 5-1. So I definitely got carried a bit because apparently being like mid at limited means when you're surrounded by a lot of really good limited players who complain a lot about the state of collation and all this, that, you just end up being the better limited player. Like truly, I can't blame it on anything other than the fact that the people who put the prep in were really thrown by this event, like really thrown. You had big names bombing draft. And I'm like decent at draft overall. My elo is pretty high for limited, but I did not expect 3-0-2-1. Yeah. I expected like 2-1, 2-1, maybe, you know, 2-1, the unlucky 1-2, and I was going to live with that. But no, 3-0, 2-1, super happy with it. And I even could have 3-0'd twice. I definitely, upon that game I lost, could have fixed some things. So yeah, just had a great time. I loved it. I thought it was super fun. And the packs were like kind of random too, which added to just the more like fun approach I had to this event. You know, like, oh cool, 0 red surging strikes out of this entire 8-man draft pod. Okay, thanks collation. It just is what it is. Like, it's just fun.
So how was your matchups going? What kind of heroes did you face?
Yeah, so like I said, I was looking for Dromais and Oldhims. I faced 0 Dromai, so that was rough because a lot of Dromais do say that they are favored into Brute, which is ridiculous. So I wanted to play that matchup. I really wanted to humble some Dromais, but it didn't happen. Instead, I faced 3 Oldhims, 2 of which pretty handy wins, one of which was a bit of a throw. I was getting cocky. By the end of the day 2, I was 9-3, going in around 13 of 14, and I was paired against Pat Eshki on Oldhim, and really felt like it was a free win. I was gonna be locked for top 32, maybe even top 8 still if I won my next 2. So I played the game a little too loose, and that guy is a fantastic player. And when I gave him an inch, he took a mile, and really punished me for being greedy. And that's not a Scabskins thing. It's like an Arsenal misplay. I won't go into it, but definitely threw that game. Like, I'm supposed to win it, but I didn't, and that's on me. So 3 Oldhims, 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 Icelander, won both of those, 1 was streamed. A Phi, hard loss. Lexi, miserable loss. And then a Kano, which was like probably the most interesting game I played because I outlasted all 3 Aether Wildfires at like 7 life. But the problem was I got stuck in the Rhinar hands that only do 6, and he eventually tall arcaned me to death. But I thought, like, holy mother, I've made this guy block with his arcane wildfires, like, they're all out, I can win this thing, and then just kind of teetered out. A little bit of a brute problem. But yeah, so 9-5 overall, 4-4 with this list in CC in particular, but it did what I wanted it to do, right? And it still beat Icelander, which I put 0 games in against, so that was fun, you know, unexpected, but you're supposed to win that, and I did.
All right, then let's jump into the deck list. Show us your equipment.
Sweet. Yeah, little long-worded intro as always from your boy Sant. But we've got the equipment I took here. Actually had a couple options on the chest piece. I took Barkbone and Tunic. Tunic was really into pretty much everything except for Ranger. Against Ranger, because of Drill Shot, I decided to include Barkbone as well because that extra 1 life is a big deal. And since you needed a bit more control on breakpoints, yeah, it was just a block 1 that you then cracked and hoped it paid off resource-wise. Pretty much always took Crown. And if I needed to, of course, Arcane Barrier-wise, Skullhorn in the head slot. For the arms, I don't know what you can see in frame here, but we'll go this way. For the arms, I had 3 options with Nullrune Gloves, Skull Crushers, and Gambler's Gloves. I took Gamblers into pretty much everything except the Wizards and Viscera, right? I would want the Nullrune Gloves. Then Skull Crushers I never actually played, but my idea was if I really felt just in the air that I was going to lose the Ranger match, then we ball, and we just take Skull Crushers instead of Gambler's Gloves. But I never actually did it. That's like a Talishar play, you know? You just click Scab Skins and it feels better, but when you do it in person, it's a lot scarier. So I never actually played this, but it was the same idea as Barkbone, of just like a little bit more block. And then we had the leg piece, which was always Scabbies. Got the alt art going with this for Leviah, as you can see. Scab Skins, it's just always block, right? And even in the Wizard matchup, if you have the room to roll, I mean, you just do it. But even if you only end up with like 1 action point, then the extra card in hand pitches to AB. So it was fine. I didn't really want anything else. The weapons, though, is where it's a little bit more interesting. I had Mandible Claws into the free matchups. The matchups that, once again, Leviah, right? The matchups where like Blood Rush just wins you the game, you just play Claws. You don't play risky at all. You just wait for your Blood Rush turn, set up a double Blood Rush if you need to, an Arsenal, and you just win. So you don't really need to be a weapon deck. But the last thing that made this kind of spicy was the Meataxe. And the Meataxe, it's not like a great card, but it's a card you need to try to chase value that the Rangers have right now. It's very hard for a Rhinar, a very fair math-wise deck, to match the damage a Ranger's doing. So if you can kind of catch this pattern of block 9, 1 card 5, block 9, 1 card 5, and then have the big turns where it's like swing big or CNC or maybe closing with Reckless or having like the crazy Alpha Rampage start, whatever, the fact that you can consistently chain 5 damage in between that felt like it kind of closed those gaps. The highs that Rhinar has, that 5 in the middle would get you there. Still not great though. It's not like this actually makes the Ranger matchups favored, it just helps close the gap the tiniest bit. So that was the equipment.
Right.
And yeah, nothing I would really change. I mean, I don't know if I'm really playing this deck ever again, honestly. It was just kind of for the event, because things will change after this.
Yeah.
But
So, yeah.
then we've got the main board, right?
Right, yeah.
Main board, like I said, I didn't really collaborate with any other Rhinar players, so I don't quite know what Rhinar lists look like beyond Chandler Toe. So I just kind of put good cards in and started cutting what felt bad. So of course Swing Big always feels good. This is one of the absolutely best cards in Rhinar. One of the cards that even LSS has mentioned might be a mistake, which is blasphemy, but it's what they said. And of course, if you do block it out, you end up with a Quicken token. Now, if you're telling me you don't take damage from Swing Big, you're an absolute chicken, friend. So this is what you get out of the whole ordeal. But Swing Big, because you're a brute deck, right, you have a lot of yellows in your deck, so the cost curve fits perfectly there. I'm not running pummels, so just the fact that, a 2-card hand with a even like a bad yellow is a Swing Big play, 2-card 8 feels really great. Then we've got Skullcrack, which can come up with that discard piece, mostly with Breakneck Battery. It's more at random in Blood Rush turns, because you're not really going to block down to have this be your only discard target. But with a Breakneck Battery, if you start with a blue, and then discard Skullcrack, you know that you'll have 2 resources floating after and be able to weapon afterwards. So actually a really good card, not only for that, but the fact that it's another non-discard playable first cycle is a really big deal. Because in your free matchups like against Oldhim, you don't want to just have a claw turn. Those turns are bad. You want to at least throw 6. Like, try to keep that pressure up. But you don't have that many options to throw 6 in your red slot. It's a lot of your yellow slot that's going to give you 6 damage with an attack, like we're skipping ahead here, but like the Beast Within's, the Riled Up, the Smash Instincts, those cost 3, but they deal 6. Costing 3 is a bit of a problem for Rhinar, so the fact that it's a red 2 cost kind of smooths things over. It's an extra 2-card hand you can play when you just had the yellow to pitch. So I actually really, really like this card, like overperformer, honestly. Then we had Pack Hunt, same deal here, it's the same cost curve, right? But there's more flexibility in that this can help with like a bunch of Intimidate stacks that you set up late game. A bit harder to pitch back into your deck because it is a red. right? But it can just happen that you just save this in Arsenal because on a bad hand it's just a 2-card 6, but on the good hands you set up, it's a full intim, big swing. So that's... Oh, not all the reds actually, that's right, we got some more. Savage Feast. This is the one card that really demands like a Scabskins roll, but I think out of the entire event, I only rolled Scabskins maybe twice, which is crazy, right? Like I even brought Gamblers into a lot of my games, so I might have to rethink that. But I just really didn't play the deck for Scabskins. The matchups that are good, you can just win by Blood Rush, right? So I wasn't risking a lot. So most of the time I'd use Savage Feast, played off Tunic, as just a 2-card 6 with Intimidate, Cycle Arsenal, which felt really strong. So yeah, with Scabskins, this card can have like a higher ceiling, but I played it pretty consistently as just like a Tunic play, as that same like 2-card 6 play, right? Then you have Breakneck Battery, which is the other half. I believe these are all French. So Assault Brise Nuke. They're the other half of like the Skull Crack combo. Also, when you have Tunic, then you start with a blue there. You can follow up with Weapon. Felt pretty good. This is probably the most cuttable card though. It didn't feel great, and in most matchups I actually ended up siding it down to 2, just because if there was a chance I ended up with like a random card in Arsenal because of like after a Meataxe draw discard or something, I almost like never want it to be this card for whatever reason. So might end up changing that if I play this list again, like I said. And then one of the last reds here, scoot this down. Last reds here, we've got the 3 costs in Alpha Rampage. Alpha Rampage you basically have to play. It's so good when you're setting up the barraging pitch stacks, and incredible turn 1 as well. If you open that hand of barraging blue 6, then Alpha Rampage comes in and just makes everyone a Kano, basically. Starts them all super low. And even the fact that late game, if you're able to keep a 3-card hand, this forces 3 damage minimum, because they're going to be left with 2 cards. If you assume they block 6, then that means they take 3. And if you're setting up like a reckless win con and you need them to take 3, this is a kind of greedy play that will pay off. Keep 3 cards and just know you deal them 3 so you can set up the right numbers later in the game. I really like this card, but I didn't play it with like any E-Pot lines or anything to set it up. It was just kind of like as I drew it. And then the last red is Massacre. This card, really don't like it. This is the card that threw me the game against Oldham. This is kind of the card that lets you play single Blood Rushes and still have really high damage. You play Blood Rush, have this in Arsenal, and just still have a good turn. The problem is it costs 3, and what I didn't realize about Rhinar is that like the resource space really is tight. It's really tight in this deck, so this probably gets cut, because the extra Intim I don't think ever came up. I was just playing it off Blood Rush, and it's honestly not better than just parking a different red attack in, so not too happy with this card, honestly.
Especially when you compare it to the other reds, right?
Right. I mean, in the perfect world, right, like you just have the resources to play it, and then it's swing big value plus an extra Intim on a Blood Rush turn. Problem is it's asking a lot for your deck to draw that way first cycle, and you don't really have room to set that up second cycle because it's a red, right? So it just like doesn't quite work with the way I was playing the deck. So yeah, that's on the chopping block. The Meataxe chopping block, we'll say. Then we've got the yellows. Yellows are honestly pretty quick to go through. They're not that special. Everyone's seen them, and you need to run them because they're your 6 base. Beast Within, though, one of the better ones because of its discard effect, actually replacing itself. Absolutely massive. You've got Riled Up. This card is kind of like the better Massacre, honestly, because if you park this in Arsenal, then it's getting the +1, so it's 7 instead of the 8 of Massacre, and against a deck that's trying to block you, the extra Intim on Massacre really doesn't matter, right? So if you can go Claw, Riled Up, yeah, that's what it's called, then honestly this just feels better because it's in yellow and you can pitch it easier first cycle. So like that card, had its use case. Reincarnate, never relevant. I was never close to fatiguing, but it is cool to just like have an extra trigger to announce. You discard it and you're like, Reincarnate trigger on the stack, and your opponent's like, what does that do? I'm like, gotcha. With a very irrelevant effect, but it's a yellow 6 that blocks 3. And then we've got Smash Instinct. This one, the Intimidate, really huge. This is the one that you don't want to just like always freely block with. The rest you pretty much can. But the fact that this has Intimidate on it is really good for when you're pitching in the yellow and blue barragings, right? Then my favorite yellow, even better than Blood Rush, honestly. Pack Call, I wish it came in foil, because this card deserves max rarity. This card, when you're playing your Meataxe matchups, just like lets you just take a deep breath. You just know the Meataxe is a 5. You just know it. And that feels so freaking good. Even when you're not running the Meataxe, the fact that this is once again like a non-discard 6, that cost 3, like it's maintaining the trade pattern you want, and then it has an upside when you do side in the Meataxe. Like this card just really felt good. Super happy with it, and it can even like tactically help you bottom like red barragings and things. Like when you're playing for the slow game, and you're like, well, if I bottom a barraging here, that actually helps the pitch stack I was setting up, and it can happen. And you know when it does, thank you, pack call. Then the Intium yellows to wrap it up.
Beautiful.
Yes, the signed by Wisnutan, Blood Rush Bellows. This card is so freaking good, but it's getting a little outclassed right now in the Ranger meta with 3 of a Kind, Rain Razors, Codex of Frailty. Those cards are very low effort to play, very high value. Blood Rush is very high effort to play, high variance on the draws, and not necessarily even high value. So many Blood Rushes are like a +2, you know? And that's ridiculous, knowing that you had to keep like a 3-card hand to try to pull those off minimum. Just nuts, just nuts. But like I said earlier in the deck tech, the matchups that are free are because of this card, so you can't hate it. Like, if you can set up the Blood Rush and Arsenal,
The Blood Rush.
I mean, it just takes it takes life away on the Intim itself, on top of adding the damage to your turn. So when a deck like Oldhim is trying to not take damage, like what does Blood Rush do? It literally gives you the game. So if you can set up double Blood Rush twice, and I run Remembrance, which you'll see in a second, that's all the damage you need to literally win the game. Blood Rush and Arsenal, wait to draw Blood Rush, go for double Blood Rush play, and you know, having kept a full hand, you will be able to claw, attack, and at that point, it's like, like 26 damage or something, if I'm doing the math right? And you do that twice, and like you just win. So that's only because of this card. It's so freaking good. And then we have the yellow barragings, which, you know, I'm going to run them.
Yeah.
They're easily pitchable. You get them next to the Alpha Rampages, you get them next to the Smash Instincts pack hunts. It just feels good. And that kind of leads us actually right into the blues, because I'm also, of course, running the blue barraging beatdowns. Once again, you do need a bit of a blue base, and these are kind of the best in that pitch stack. Blue Wrecker Romp, you have to run it. You never want to play it, but there was one of the times I did roll Scab Skins was because I ended up with this card in Arsenal from like a random Beast Within I wasn't accounting for. I ended up with Wrecker Romp, and I said, you know what, we'll put it in Arsenal, we'll wait until I have like Tunic up, we'll roll Scabs, still get Wrecker Romp in, and then Tunic one floating for the Meataxe, and it did work, but you know, you actually shouldn't try to make those plays, it just came up, right? And then Sand Sketch Plan, a card that pretty much all I do is block with, but sometimes if your opponent is stuck on like a do-nothing hand because your Intims were good, then you kind of get room to Sand Sketch Plan. And yeah, I mean, it can work out to just give you an extra action point without having to roll Scabs, and if that happens, cool. Yeah. But then the spicy part, I think, in the blue base, apart from the fact that it's only 12 blues, is that I run 3 Reckless Swing. Now, in the free matchups, I do side out 1, because this is only 54 cards, I think, that we're looking at, but I do side out 1 of the Reckless Swings instead of, in place of a Remembrance for the matchups that are free, because you don't really need to win off Reckless. You need to have them in your deck so your opponent respects it, but you don't need them to win. It's the unfair matchups where you need to hope that by some stroke of God, you get them to 6 and then can actually win through triple Reckless. Because everyone is playing around double Reckless, even a Ranger will start playing around double Reckless and still out-trade you when they overblock, which is ridiculous, but that's Ranger. So having 3 Reckless means there are scenarios where you can get them to 6, and they think they're safe, and they start trying to play around not getting to 4, and then you just win. Because you can do it thanks to the 3rd copy of this card. And it actually did come up. The only reason I got the 5 game close at all was the 3rd Reckless. I got him to 1. So, off the 3rd Reckless. So if I hadn't missed a damage somewhere early on, then, you know, it really would have been thanks to this card that I won. But in testing, that's what the 3rd Reckless was doing.
Alright. Yeah, so let's come to the sideboard for last.
Yes, sideboard for last. It's a pretty easy one, honestly, because I didn't put much thought into it. Like I said, I only played this deck on Talishar. But 54 card main, right? So into the Rangers, I'm taking a sideboard package along with the Meataxe that's trying to just have like the littlest bits of better value you can try to squeak out of a Rhinar deck. And that's going to come from the slightest bit of disruption that Command and Conquer adds. You don't really want to keep a 2-card hand for CNC, which sounds crazy, but you eating that amount of damage, whatever it was, like the extra 3, to throw back CNC when you could just block 3 or return Meataxe for 5, you only really make the play to play double CNC when they've got double Arsenal. Like, that's when you have to try something to disrupt that play, because they'll always eat the Meataxe. So, CNC, you really don't play it much, but you have to have it just in case you can actually slow down a Ranger. It's only because of this card. Defensively, I was adding in 2 Down and Dirty and 1 Fate for Scene. This is to help play around Codex of Frailty because, you had good targets, like you could put a Swing Big in Arsenal, but the problem was they would bring back like a Infecting Shot or a Heat Seeker or something as that last card, and if you couldn't block the 5, the game just spiraled. I mean, those cards are so high value, so being able to bring back down a Dirty and then come in with the block 3 to just say, okay, you got your Ponder, you'll have a 5-card hand, but at least I didn't eat your like 1 for 7, right? It was fine, and it's a base 6, so you discard her off Meataxe and that kind of sets everything up for you, and it's a 2 for 6, which, I mean, that's kind of like Brute's rate anyway. Like, we paid you resources for 6 damage, it's what we do. And then the 1 Fate Foreseen, I tried multiple accounts of this, and it didn't work well with Meataxe. But the extra defense kind of helps bridge the amount of 0-for-4s they have, just save you a little bit with that extra drill shot, the extra searing shot. Those 4s are just so tough to eat for the deck. So one of these helped because then your opponent's also counting around how many you have. You just have to hope you don't discard it off Meataxe. And then you opt, so it also helps the Meataxe, right? So that was really kind of the anti-ranger package. Then we had the anti-wizard package. I would bring in the Pulpings and the Barrage and Beatdowns. This wasn't just against wizards, but obviously the extra intims are huge, the extra go wide is huge. But the Barrage and Beatdowns came in their own right. Also against like the Oldhim matchups. Against Oldhim, you just want more Intimidates, right? And you want more 2 for 6s, and you don't want any variance in the deck. So against the Oldhims, I'd bring in something like this, and then swap out the Last Reckless for the Remembrance.
All right.
Right? But against the Wizards, it just looked like this. Against Dromai, it looked like this. So a bit of a play with like those kind of packages, but I wanted the extra popper, I wanted a possibility to stop their D-reacts, and then also a card that I could just throw into Maragai. So you kind of like play with that, but like I said, I didn't think around too much with what I was doing this sideboard. We just kind of balled. And that's the last slots. We're at 2, where'd the Remembrance go? The 2 Arc Smash and 1 Remembrance. So this was coming into Oldhim, like I said, because you do need 2 double Blood Rushes to win. But I was also bringing this package in against Dash, because I think at this event it was more likely that they were on the defensive dash, like pretty much confirmed at this point, the whole tree frog dash thing. So that kind of let the 3rd slot be Remembrance instead of Arc Smash, because if I didn't know what kind of dash it was, I think I would always bring in 3 Arc Smash meta-wise, but because it was more likely to be the slow dash, the Remembrance also puts in work in that matchup, because they're going to be super defensive, so knowing that I bring this in to go for the double Blood Rush in that matchup too, felt really big. And then just the extra shuffling in to destroy items, right? In the off chance that it is a more aggro dash, it's only 1 non-block that I'm adding to the list. So this just kind of felt like the right way to balance that. And that kind of rounded it out. And like I said, it was only a 4-4 record in CC, but I knew there were a lot of bad matchups for this deck. And I knew I would hopefully win the ones I wanted to. So that one Oldhim game is going to sit with me, because going 4-4 is like, that's a Levia record. And I went off Levia for this deck. And I guess in the end, like, 35th is good. Walked home with $1,000, which is more than I make doing coverage, so that's kind of hilarious. Half-assing an event and walking away with more money than putting months of effort into an event. Like that, wow. I can't believe that that's how the payment worked. Whatever. Different story. But yeah, it was a fun event. It was a fun event and met so many cool people, and ended up being the highest placing Rhinar with a list that I think is like pretty different. Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily better. And it's not necessarily something I'll play again, because things are about to change, right? Ban list, Dusk Till Dawn, and maybe LL after RTN season, something happens there. We'll see. So we'll see. But Alex, I mean, this was fun, man. Last time I saw you was Lille, so this has been really cool to be back.
So for last, do you want to shout out anyone?
Well, I've got a shout out for one, my own channel. I'm really trying to do the coverage game circuit right, and all the support means the world there. All you really have to do is tune in, subscribe, be active in the chat, and that just means the world. I look at the metrics, and it's just so awesome to see the positivity that comes through to those things. And if this comes out before the giveaway, please jump in that last Ivophidia giveaway that I'm doing, Ivophidia playmat giveaway I'm doing on the most Battle-Hardened Richmond stream. Just leave a comment, and then you'll be entered in to win that sucker. Also, shout out to Fab Metal Tokens. They're doing a promotion right now where they're selling Levia pins.
Yeah, you want to show it?
Which you might have to edit this out, because I don't know where they are in the bag.
All right.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, let's go.
Fab Metal Tokens offered out of the blue to sell this Levia pin and actually donate the profits direct to my streaming fund. So, I mean, that's incredible effort. Not many organizations are showing that kind of effort, but Fab Metal Tokens went out of their way to do that. and really, really appreciate it because it means the world to have support come through that way. And it's a really cool pin. So you can buy this on their website for 8. I probably will have some in person if you see me at events as well. So that's the plugs out of the way. Shout out to the Fleshblade community. Shout out to you, Alex. Everyone I've talked to here. Nathan from Savage Land News has been trying to bring me into the Rhinar Club now, which has felt kind of cool because us Leviathan players are like a very different crowd. Intimidate is its whole own mechanic, and Blood Debt is its own just awfulness that we deal with. So it's been cool. I've been kind of enveloping myself with different play groups now, and it's really fun. So yeah, that'll be it. Thank you.
Amazing work, Ethan.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.